Hi, good evening, Tobias. So, do you remember me? We already met at a call when me and Krishi were working together at the Algorithmics. So, we were working on reconstruction of GANs, and you gave us some very amazing insights into how AI could help us and how UI is designed around AI. So, really nice to meet you again.
Yeah,
Thanks.
nice to meet you again. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. It's been a while since Algorithm X hadn't. So yeah, glad to be back here.
Yeah, you met us when we were probably just beginning our journey into AI, and now it's probably 2 years, I guess.
Yeah, it must be something like that. Wow.
Yeah, and you've aged well. Can't see a difference here. So
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so I think we can start. Anyways, people are still joining. I think some of the committee members can let them in. So, okay, I think the meeting's recording. So, yeah, I will get into it. So, hi everyone. Good evening. This is Krishi from the AIML team here at Coding Club. So, today we have a very interesting and an interactive session planned for you guys. So I'll be recording this session, obviously, for the benefit of those who will be missing it due to the commute from college. So no worries. Today it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming our guest for this evening, Mr. Tobias Zwingmann, who was very kind to accept our invite and make time in his extremely busy schedule. So just a few words about our guest. So Tobias Zwingmann is an experienced senior data scientist from Germany. He is also the co-founder of the German AI startup called Rapid AI and is on a mission to help companies adopt machine learning and artificial intelligence while achieving meaningful business impact and reducing the risk of project failure. Before founding Rapid AI, he has worked in a corporate setting for quite some time, where he has been responsible for creating company-wide data strategy and building out data science use cases. One thing to note, he is also a published O'Reilly author of the book called AI Powered Business Intelligence, which was released earlier this year. His weekly newsletter, which focuses on use cases for analytics, called AI for BI Rocks, has followers all around the world. It's an honor to have you with us today. We are all eager for your talk. Over to you, Tobias.
Yeah, thank you very much, Krishi, for this kind introduction. Yeah, really appreciate the intro. I'm just pulling up some slides over here, and I hope that you guys can see my slides. It would be good if you could just give a quick feedback because I just see those right now. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I mean, thanks again for having me today. And the good thing is I can completely skip this intro slide because Christy has already given such a great introduction. There's nothing much more to add to that. Just one shout out, a heads up here, like, if you want to connect afterwards or reach out, feel free to use LinkedIn, for example. I'll also share my email address. And yeah, so I would say let's get started with the topic for today. So there will be 6 points that we're covering today. At first, we're going to talk about, a quick intro on AI and business intelligence, because, as you know, the topic of today will be how we can use AI to improve analytics and make it, get insights faster, in less time and get more results. And the second block will be a overview of, what different impact areas exist when you want to apply AI and BI. And then I'll walk you through 3 different examples where I've seen, those things being applied in practice. And then finally, there will be a small surprise for everyone who stays in up to the end. So yeah, there will be this surprise at the end. Okay, and I would say without further ado, let's get started. And I always like to quickly or briefly discuss, the high-level concepts or the high-level terminology when we are speaking about things like AI and BI. Because the thing is, these terms are really kind of like universal right now, but everyone has a slightly different understanding of what that means. So I would like to bring in my kind of own definition here, so we're all just on the same page. So when I talk about BI or analytics, right, in this case, so BI for me at least is a system or software that enables businesses and users and analysts to look at data from multiple sources within an organization with the goal of making better informed decisions. So you can kind of like, shorten this whole paragraph to, you have data and in the end you want to make better decisions, right? That's the core of business intelligence and it's the core of BI and analytics. And when I talk about BI, I particularly also refer to the systems that enable BI, right? So when we talk about BI, we talk about tools like Power BI, like Tableau, Looker, and the whole underlying infrastructure, that runs these systems. But BI systems can also be something, BI systems can also live in a custom environment or in a custom framework or whatever you're using for that, right? But in the end, it's all about like making better decisions from data. So that's BI. What's AI? And this is where opinions go a little bit, side by side. But the way I like to explain and define is AI is, by using this chart here on the right side. The term AI in particular has actually been around since the 1950s, so it's not that new, kind of. But since then, there have been like two big streams, and we have to know that this terminology AI in the 1950s originally came from military purposes, where people tried to use that technology for military purposes after the Second World War started. So that's when the whole research track went off there, and since then there were like two big broad categories of AI. The first one is general AI, that helps to, or that aims to solve any given problem that the system has never seen before. And this one up to today really remains a research case. So far, there is nothing like general AI. I would say there isn't even something close to that. Even if you look at systems, that, look something like that, like ChatGPT, they are not general AI. They are not even close to that. But still, it's a research area. And, we don't know if this will be reached or when this will be reached, but still there is, there is this research happening in this area. And then there's the second category, I would say, which is called narrow AI. And narrow AI aims to solve a very specific problem that the system has been designed for and trained on. And this is actually the approach, when I talk about AI nowadays, I'm referring to narrow AI. I'm referring to systems that are capable of solving a very specific problem and, a problem that this system has been trained on. And turns out that very recently, like, in the past maybe 2 decades or so, there has been a technology called machine learning, which has actually almost powered every recent breakthrough that we have seen in narrow AI. And that's why I almost always use like the terms AI and machine learning really interchangeably, because when I talk about AI, I mean narrow AI. And when we look at narrow AI in particular, most of the things that are happening there, have been made possible through machine learning. So I think it's reasonable, to use those terms in interchange. But I know there are other people who have different thoughts about that, who think AI and ML, these are different things. But, for me, if we follow this definition here, there's I think you can make a point of using them interchangeably. So that's why machine learning is very at the core of what's happening at narrow AI. And what is machine learning? So I don't really want to discuss that too much, because I think all of you here are aware of that. Just the main points to quickly highlight that is machine learning is a programming paradigm that aims to find pattern in data, and it has 2 phases, right? The training and the inference phase. So the core idea in machine learning is to find patterns in historical data, and solve a specific task. I could count different examples, but I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that. So I think the much more interesting question right now is why should we care about AI for BI? And I want to come back to a trend which is going on for the past years and still going on. This is that the global volume of data is growing rapidly, and it's growing and growing, and we are need to deal with larger and larger amounts of data. I mean, you can only look at your own cell phone data plans or usage, right? If you look at data plans 10 years ago, they had a mini volume of data that could be used in nowadays. We need much more than that. I think that's a good proxy to see what's going on. And when we translate that to the business section, or to the business sector or business side of things, then we can realize that organizations are often able to handle large data volumes with modern technology, right? So we have technologies like, big data or cloud data warehouses that are, often able to just handle the sheer volume of data. They can often do that. So, we have overcome that. They are sometimes able to handle the growing complexity with good data management. And I'm saying here sometimes because, of all those companies who are able to deal with the volume, a small fraction is able to deal with the complexity. And of that fraction, really a very, very tiny amount of companies is really able to draw insights from all data due to a shortage of data literate people. And I'm highlighting the fact here of people in this regard, because this is often not really a technology topic, but the problem is that it starts from data collection, data interpretation, data analysis. We're lacking people in this whole game who are, data literate enough to work on these things, because as you can see on this chart over here, the growth happens so fast. There's no way people could keep up with that in that volume. So, and the need for AI and BI is therefore fueled by the following trends, right? If we summarize that, first, we have to, there's a need to get quick answers from data, right? If you look at users and organizations, they need data-driven insights to stay competitive. And due to the shortage of people, right, analysts are overwhelmed with inquiries. Business users expect quick and easy answers they use to get from Google and Alexa, right? So it's very hard to explain business users why they can go to Google and just come up with any information they like to know. But when it's about finding out what the sales data was last year in a certain area of the world, that can be sometimes really difficult to get, and it's very hard to keep an argument for that in the current overall ecosystem. And then the second one is democratization of insights. So business users, they have been accustomed to self-service BI solutions for quite a while. And however, today's large and complex data makes serving these solutions increasingly difficult. So just imagine about the complexity of data that you have in large organizations. That makes it really, really challenging for people to work with these complex data sources or data sets. And then thirdly, that's the accessibility of ML services. So we have seen, a huge adoption of low-code and no-code platforms in the realms of, machine learning, which gives ML capabilities, to non-data scientists. And this, of course, puts pressure on the legacy BI team, because we certainly have a phenomenon where people have access to those tools, but they see that these tools have not been integrated yet into a BI ecosystem. And so they are wondering, if I can use those tools here, why are we not able as a company to use them and to benefit from them? So these are, I would say, three trends that really fuel this need for AI and BI. Another question is how can actually AI affect BI, or what kind of effect can AI have in BI? And a very common misconception that I hear over and over again is that AI is something like the next step of BI, right? Where people imagine you have data collection at the beginning, then you have BI over that, and then at the top there's something like AI. And I believe that is not true. That is only true if you're going to build your own AI services, but it's not true if you see AI more of an enabler for BI services. In my opinion, AI can be an enabler that can improve BI systems, reportings, and dashboards across 3 different levels. And I'll quickly explain what these levels are. Descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, and data ingestion. These are all the levels where AI can actually help BI systems to be more effective and more powerful, and give it to more people, and thus have larger access to them. And the next few slides will be walking you through some of the application areas, how that works in practice, and what kind of impact AI can have on these fields. And you are probably familiar with that chart here on the right, which is taken from Gartner, where we have the different stages of analytics, where we have the value on the vertical axis, and then the complexity on the horizontal axis, and where you see that the more you mature through those stages, the higher the value, but also the more complex things to look at. And again, my point on that is that AI can actually help you across the whole value chain to get better results and better performance. And so let's start with the first impact area, and that's the one here on the bottom left, covering descriptive analytics and diagnostic analytics. And I would summarize that as automation, and ease of use. In my opinion, AI can help to make the BI tool more intelligent and easier to use and especially more accessible for non-technical users. And for example, by combing through data in seconds, suggesting insights, discovering interesting correlations or unusual observations, or by just providing a layer that lets users interact with their data more naturally, for example, through language. And the examples that I bring today will all come from this from this sector here, from this first impact area, automation and ease of use, because I think that's really gives us a high leverage of applying AI in BI. But nevertheless, there's also a second impact area, which I call better forecasting and predictions. So in this respect, AI can help to produce better forecasts with more data and less human supervision. So that's the prediction on a macro level. And AI can help you to calculate predictions at scale for optimized decision-making, prediction on a micro level. So, just imagine the following example. Let's say you have a forecast on you're an organization and you want to forecast how many customers are in your organization over the next couple of months or weeks or whatever. And you could just take the aggregate of your customer count, and just consider that as a time series problem and just try to forecast that into the future. That will be like a macro level prediction. But what you can also do is analyze every customer that you have in your organization and make something like a churn prediction that comes up with a score of how likely this customer is to still be in the business, for example, next month or the next 2 months, and then use those aggregated micro level predictions and summarize them and come up with the overall prediction then using that, which is of course more powerful, because then you can also bring into account the revenue potential certain customers have and make a prediction about revenue losses in the future. And this is how AI can help you in those micro scenarios. And integrated, these things here are typically integrated in the BI systems themselves. Some BI systems like Power BI, they have built-in capabilities to run those predictive models, but they can actually also be added separately to the data in the analytical layer. Just think about applying a model to data which lives in a data warehouse, and then it's just be consumed by a BI system. So you can actually hook that up with any BI system that you have. And then last but not least, the third impact area that we see oftentimes is data ingestion. And what many people overlook is that the increasing data growth that we see is driven by unstructured data, right? So we have a lot of text data, a lot of document data, and all these things which are really hard normally to be processed and interpreted by machines. And this is actually where AI can help. So AI can, for example, help you to extract data from your PDF documents. It can analyze text data, analyzing sentiments, turning that into structured data. And all these different techniques allow you to take a bunch of unstructured data, turn that into structured data, and feed that into your BI system. So making flat tables out of large and complex documents, and then trying to include that in your relational databases and including that in your reporting layer, and thus being able to really build on the large data volume that you have and the diverse data structures that you have, and allowing you to analyze them at scale automatically. And of course, technologies for that include computer vision, but also especially natural language processing. And there has been a lot of really development happening in that space, in both spaces, in computer vision, but especially also in natural language processing. I'm sure you're all familiar with ChatGPT. That's only one example how the progress in NLP is happening right now. And as you can see, when we talk about data ingestion, it gets clear that this affects all the stages where data is used. Because if you feed in different data right from the beginning, you have an impact on all the different stages or all the different layers that come on top of that. So these are the three impact areas that we have: automation, ease of use, better forecasting and predictions, and then lastly, data ingestion. And that's why I think, and I hope you see why I have this point, that I see AI as an enabler for BI across the whole analytical data lifecycle. So just be aware, we still need high data quality. We still need data to work with, essentially. But it's not like that we have to figure out BI perfectly first and then think about AI in the next step. But we should rather think about how we can use AI in order to make our analytics and our reporting more effective and more efficient. And actually going to show you 3 examples today of how this is done in practice and how we can do that in practice. And just one heads up over here, I'm going to use a lot of examples taken from Microsoft Power BI as a BI software, but the general, techniques behind that or general concepts, they also exist in other BI softwares like Tableau, for example. But these are also capabilities which you can build out yourself, right? And you will see that in a minute how that could look like. So just to give you a heads up, so I'll essentially walk you through Power BI examples, but don't focus on those tools so much. You can actually also implement that, with your own stack. So the first case I want to bring is explore data with natural language. And in Power BI, this feature is called Q&A. And it turns out that the fastest way to get answers from your data is to search using natural language. And the benefits of that is that actually your users have been trained in that process for years because they have been using Google in order to retrieve information. So they know how to use a text prompt and get information back. And there's also no need to anticipate every question with a report. And that's typically a very tedious job of an analyst to come up with reports, come up with pre-built metrics and everything that needs to be kind of like predefined so users can then, consume them. And in fact, it turns out that oftentimes business users need a certain limited amount of, really high level KPIs that they can look at. But once they want to dive deeper, you need to have some flexibility in order to allow them to ask all the different questions they have. Because typically if you have one question, that leads to another question, that leads to another question, to another question, and so on. And this is where those language interfaces come in really handy. And the way, this actually is not really a new feature in Power BI. I think this has been in there for, I don't know, at least the last 5 years. But the huge advancements that we see in NLP technology have really made this feature much more easy and much more convenient. And this is how it looks like here on the right side. I'll just walk you through that in a bit, in a more detail. Just to give you some background, Power BI is generally free and available to all users. This Q&A feature, so you can just, for example, download Power BI and then try it out yourself. The only thing you have to do is add the Q&A visual to your dashboard, and then just add data into that, or use text prompts to get the visuals that you actually want to see. So I'm also happy to share this presentation afterwards, so you can just run that by your own. And this is how this language prompt looks like. So here on the right side, you see this Power BI visual, the Q&A visual, which the first thing here is the text prompt, the text box where the user can type their questions or queries with autocomplete features. The second one is a suggestion box where there are some pre-suggested questions that a user can just click and also get an intuition and feel how these things are working. And then there's a convert icon here which lets you then take the outputs that this visual produces and turn that into static reports or static visuals. And then also, you're provided with some more options, which I'll talk about later in a bit. So just to give you an idea of, how these questions look like, or, what kind of questions you can ask. So there are different types here on this slide of questions you can ask. For example, you can ask natural questions like, which sales have the highest revenue? So that's possible, but you can also use filters here or apply filters directly. For example, you can ask sales in the last year, or sales in the US, sales for product category A or B. And just by going through those different filters, I hope you see how powerful that could be, because if you want to do that manually and apply those filters, these are a lot of things you need to drag and drop and set some manual filters and pull those measures together. And I guess that a lot of you are actually, quite data literate and know how to do these things. But we must not forget that in the average organizations, many people are not used to this process, right? They feel overwhelmed. If you give them a pivot table with 20 or 30 different measures in that, they just feel overwhelmed by the complexity of it. And we're just looking at sales data here, and we already have the time dimension. We have the dimension of the region, and we have the dimension of the categories. So these things can really become really complex really quickly. So even if this might look trivial right now, if you look at that at scale, right, it takes a lot of complexity out of your dashboards. And you can produce specific visuals. For example, you can ask the Q&A tool to plot sales by product as bar chart, right? Put that there. You can run aggregations, sorting, comparisons, and over also time time series charts and plot things over time if these are date time variables. So these are just some example queries. And again, they are not only applying to Power BI, but generally how you can use language in order to interact with your data. One nice feature in Power BI is that it allows you to benefit from autocomplete. So once the user types something, you get all those suggestions, similar to what you used from Google. And that's what I mean, that users have been trained in this process for years, right? If you show that to users, most of your users will be kind of aware what this tool is trying to tell you, and how this is working. And then that's the output, right? So if you want to if you, for example, insert a query here, which is show me sales by release year. In this case, you just get that line out, that line chart, which shows you the sales over the period of time. But you can also use, you can also ask for other charts like line charts, bar charts, matrix. You can plot tables, everything essentially to get the data that you want. So it's a very flexible and really powerful tool. And this is just like some quick interaction which I took from the from the resources here that show you how this looks in practice, right? So the user can input the query, then they can go through the different to those visuals, they can refine their query and see what happens to those charts here on the right side if the user is actually clicking on one filter, for example, right? So if this user is now looking for show total global sales by genre, and then he clicks a genre, you can see it on the right side, all those bars are adjusting. And this is one of the cross-filter capabilities in Power BI, and it makes it really easy and intuitive for users to use a dashboard. And just compare this approach to the kind of like non-AI powered approach where you have like a gazillions of different measures and dimensions somewhere listed under your data model, and then the user has to like pull on all these different things manually. So I think this can be really, really powerful. And again, like the AI component here is, of course, like the NLP interface, right? If you don't have this NLP interface, you have to like define every question that the user could ask like by hand and manually, and this just doesn't work. So you need to have a good language model underneath here in order to get good results. So that was the first example I wanted to show you. And again, like here are some further resources, so feel free to check them out and see how these things could be working for you. But now I would like to come to the second example, which is which I call automated pattern finding. Right, in Power BI, this feature is called the key influencer tool, and this actually comes back or relates back to a typical use case that report users have in analytics or in dashboards. They look at some metric. Some metric has changed, maybe revenue went up or sales went down, whatever, and they want to understand like what happened, what were the influencing factors for that event happening. And it turns out that in the end, what you do is you try to identify patterns in data, and this is where machine learning is really, really good at. And in Power BI, this feature has been implemented, as I said, as the so-called key influencer tool, and it helps you understand the factors that drive a metric by analyzing your data, ranking the factors that matter most, and displaying them as key influencers. And it's really practical or really good to use when you want to see which factors affect a different metric. For example, you see sales going up, and you want to know, okay, is that due to like changes in the products or changes in the regions or anything, what led to this metric change? Or if you want to compare the relative importance of these factors or features, or if you want to identify segments in your data. And again, this is how you could include or use that in Power BI, for example. But again, the actual methodology, you could also build that yourself, essentially, using machine learning models that are running underneath that application. So just to give you an overview of what's happening in this key influencer tool here. So at the top, you have two toggles. You can switch between key influencers and segments. We're not covering segments today, so let's stick to the key influencers. Then you can actually have a drop-down menu. We can choose the variable that you have defined up front, if you want to analyze if this is going to be high or low. And then it helps you, with this restatement here to interpret the left pane. So this reads like when, for example, when, and then you see that here, role in org is consumer, then the likelihood of rating being low increased by 2.57x times. And this is actually a very good example of how you can convey those like insights and explanations to your users in very friendly language. And once you click on one of those key influencers, you will automatically see the distribution here on the right pane, right, where you see, for example, in this case, a rating is more likely to be low when theme is usability than otherwise on average, right? So if this variable theme has the category usability, then you can see, okay, this influences my ratings to be low, for example. And this provides a really good interactivity. And what's happening here actually is that this tool is using an analysis that runs on the table level based on the fields that were added to this visual. And the fields in this case are the you can imagine that you have one variable that you want to have explained. For example, here's the ratings, and then you have other variables that are influencing, or that you suppose are influencing these features, like for example demographic factors, or products, sales data, whatever, right? Basically all the different measures that you have. And then those measures and aggregates, can be used as explanatory factors, and this works for both categorical and continuous variables. And if you wonder, okay, like, this looks like just like a plain bar chart, right, or just like a plain scatter plot, like how is AI actually involved over here? And the answer to that is this key influencers tools only works because this visual uses machine learning to model the effect the input variables, that's the explain by variables, have on the output variable. So you can interpret it to a little degree as something like the feature importance. Let's say if you build a model for predicting the rating of a certain video game, for example, in this case, and you take all the other variables as input features, right? And then you come up with some feature importance like this, where you see, okay, like this feature has the highest importance, and by making that interactive to your BI users, you let them kind of like explore what kind of variables are leading to the change in the metric they want to observe. And in the end, it's not magic really, right? So it's not really that high sophisticated AI algorithms are working here under the hood, but the way you bundle all these components together and the experience you make for your users is a very good example how you can use machine learning at the core in order to deliver a much faster and much more seamless experience to your user. Because if it was not for machine learning, then you probably would not see those estimates, those exact rankings, and also it probably wouldn't be as fast as it is right now, because you have that pre-filtering there and just can just look at the most important features and then look at like all the different categories that you have in your data or in the explaining variables. So again, if you want to dive deeper, that's a resource here for the key influencers visual, which you can find in Power BI. So feel free to check this out and just try it out. And my experience is it's really always best to just play around with those tools and see how they are working, and then you just find out if they can be useful for you or not. But I find them really powerful, and especially if it's for data exploration, it can really speed up your overall data analysis process. And the last example I want to show you today is what I call an automated root cause analysis. And again, in Power BI, this feature is called decomposition trees. But if you are familiar with basically how decision trees work in machine learning, right? So that is really similarly adaptable to that. But the reason or the way this works here is still a little different compared to decision trees, and I'll explain that in a bit. So first of all, just to explain what this thing here is doing, it automatically aggregates data and lets you perform drill downs in basically any order. But the trick here is that AI will suggest the next best drill down level based on a selected criteria. And this is really good when you want to do ad hoc exploration or when you want to do a root cause analysis. So for example, let's say you have a overall aggregate over here. So that's the total number of back orders here in a in a supply chain scenario. And then you want to break that down by different categories, and you just want to find out, okay, what factors are actually influencing the high, back orders that we see in our stocks. And you can just go through this tree, piece by piece, and the like the AI capability here is suggesting you those, different split levels piece by piece that are, the ones that contribute most to the change that you want to observe. For example, you want to see, okay, what feature or what variable is influencing, the amount of back orders most to be high or low. And again, this is how you can add it in Power BI. It's essentially just a visual which you can drag and drop on your report canvas, and then it's ready to use. And the only thing you need to do is really, put that on the canvas. Then you need to input what data you want to analyze. What's the measure that you want to analyze, like total of sales, or a number of back orders, whatever, any measure which you want to analyze. If this is like when this went up or went down, like what happened, and the like explain by dimensions you like to drill down into. And again, how AI is at work here, those AI splits that I just mentioned, they suggest the next drill down level considering all available fields. In this case, these are columns based on your selected criteria. So you can pick, for example, if you pick high values, it will find the next drill down level that causes the observed variable to be high. And if it's like, if you select low value, it will find the next drill down level that causes the observed variable to be low. Again, no magic, but automation at scale. You can imagine it as a decision tree, which is interactive, right? Where you have only the first node of a decision tree, and then you decide, okay, now make the split depending on this first criteria should have a high value. Like how would the split look like if I want this criteria, the first one, to be high? And this is how you like interact with your decision tree. And again, this is also something that you could build by yourself, for example, right? So there's no magic really underneath, but the way it's all integrated into like one system, I think that's really the kind of the magic that happens here. But at its core, really, it's nothing fancy in the end. And so that's why I really want to make the point that, even though I'm giving you Power BI examples here, right, it's really something that you can also like integrate, in other BI tools, or even, come up with by yourself, just build a project on that, and, build that out on your own if you like that. But I think the Power BI integration gives you already a good outline of how the overall user flow and interaction with that, tool would look like. And I think it's a great use case or example of, how AI can be integrated in BI scenarios or in dashboarding scenarios, such as this one over here. And yeah, here are the further resources for that. And with a quick look on the time, I think we are almost on point. So I thank you for this, for this presentation, and for having me here on this webinar. And I promise you a little surprise, and this is the surprise. So here's a promo code which is valid until the end of this year. So I think only like almost not exactly 2 weeks. So until 31st December. And with this promo code, you get access to the full O'Reilly platform, which includes all O'Reilly books, all webinars, everything on their platform for 30 days. So I really can just recommend, checking it out, because there are a lot of really good materials on there. And if you like, you'll also find my book, and you can read my book over there. And this book, by the way, will also give you a much more detailed explanation of some of the concepts that we just covered today, especially, for example, with regards to predictive analytics or reading in unstructured data. So if you want to learn more about that, please check out the book. Also, or feel free to subscribe to my newsletter, ai4bi.rocks, and just keep updated there. So, and with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and open the room for questions and some interactive discussions. Thank you very much.
I have put a Slido link in the chat box. So if any of you are interested in asking any question anonymously, you
May
can
I ask
go
a
ahead.
question?
Yeah, you can.
Awesome,
Yes,
thank
yes.
you. Thank you for the awesome session, sir. It was amazing, and the organizers, thank you so much for this. The doubt I had was being in the data science field for such a long time, sir. What would be one biggest learning that you would like to share with students like us that we can use?
Yeah, I think honestly, when we learn data science and when we are in our whole data bubble, we arrive at a point where everything seems so so intuitive, and everything is so clear, and just for example, looking at a pivot table, right, and being able to interpret a pivot table, or being able to like pull filters into a pivot table, things like that, which we think is really natural. Like most people out there, like most normal people out there in businesses, they are overwhelmed by that, right? So, and you need to really find a way in order to option A, bring your message across. Like, they don't do any analysis, you do the analysis, you do the presentation, right? You make the suggestion what they want to do. Or if that does not scale, or if you don't want that approach, you need to find the same language, and that can be the tool, or that can be this language interface, whatever. But you need to find that kind of interactivity that works for the the people that you do this analysis for. Because what does not work is that you assume, hey, look, everyone can run a Jupyter notebook, or hey, everyone can pull the pivot table and Excel together. That's not how it works. Like, nobody is actually waiting for you to come up with those things, right? So you need to really find a way in order to pair up with business users and get them on board. And this might change over the next couple of years or so, because a lot of industries and companies are investing heavily into data literacy trainings and training people to get more literate in that. But it's a process that takes time. So yeah, that's why I really encourage you to kind of like try to step out of your own bubble as quickly as possible, and just see wherever you are working, like what are the challenges people face, and what's the best communication channel in order to work together with them. Sometimes that's working together in an Excel document. If you're in a tech company, everyone's happy sharing a Jupyter notebook. In another company, everyone wants to have the latest tech, right? It can be completely different, depending on your setup. So yeah, that's what I would say here.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question.
Is anyone else here on Meet?
So hi, Tobias, amazing talk you had there. So I have a question. So do you think BI tools can be used for non-business problems? For instance, be a business, as what I see is basically a problem of maximum linear regression or multiple linear regression. Like what happens is the prices either go up with time or go down with time. So that's what happens here. But there are problems in the real world that are usually circular, or that have a very unpredictable pattern around them. So can BI tools be used there? If they can be used there, they would basically revolutionize this industry, right? So why are BI tools not yet used there, and can they be used there? Do you see them being used in non-business applications, like predictive analysis and non-business applications?
Yeah, that would be my question. What is non-business application? So you mean when it's more about like technical applications? So you're meaning like non-business, then you mean technical applications, or what do you mean with non-business?
Exactly. Like let me give you a scenario. So we did a project which basically examines sensor data of a person walking. So, and based on that, we would usually predict what the next phase or what the next stance of the person is going to be. So can BI tools predict, like we built an LSTM model to predict what the future phase is going to be. So can BI tools, do the job for us? Can they, predict such complicated patterns?
So the way I see BI tools is they serve mostly as a communication or interactivity layer to people who are not that technical. For example, I give you an example. You might be building this model, right? But I mean, how is this model like? How is this model like being like exposed to users? Like, for example, maybe you have an API, maybe you build a whole own application around that where people can upload their pictures or just track a status or so, whatever. I don't know, right? But at some point you have to come up with a user layer. And like, for example, when I talk about AI use cases, I like to, or machine learning use cases, I like to like structure them in 3 layers. So we have the data layer, like what data do we have? We have the analysis layer, like what what's happening in analytics, and then we have the user layer. And I think most of the real like core analytical work, the one that you described, for example, with predictive analytics, should happen in a abstracted an analysis layer, which is not being exposed to the user. There could be a model that makes batch predictions to a database, or it could be a model that sits somewhere as an endpoint, online endpoint, and when a user opens their BI dashboard, it will ask the model to make the predictions, for example. And the BI layer, in my opinion, or the business intelligence layer, in my opinion, just allows like more people in the company, maybe more not so technical people in the company, to interact with your model. I don't really see it as a technical tool in order to build those models or so. In terms of technical usage, like the way I liked, for example, also to use Power BI or other BI tools is just for data exploration, for really fast and quick and easy data exploration. Because sometimes it's fun, just to explore your data, like writing some Python code and running a Jupyter notebook and seeing what's going on. But in many cases, you can just like load in your data into a BI dashboard and just come up with the reports that you need, or for example, using the key influencer tool and see what are the most important factors over here, and then take that as a start of your analysis. But otherwise, I would really see like those things a little separated, right? The technical layer and the business layer.
Okay, I get it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking the question.
Okay. And yeah, we have another question in the slide. How can Power BI be used by businesses that don't focus much on formal data collection?
What was the last part on?
That don't focus much on formal data collection.
On formal data collection. Okay, that probably means structured data collection. That's how I interpret it right now. Okay, so basically, BI tools, classical BI tools, always expect relational data and relational databases. So if you don't have relational databases, your first job is to take whatever non-formal data you have and put that into a relational database. Because it turns out if your data is not relational, that means your data actually does not have a model which a end user can easily interact with. So that's why I think you always need to bring your unformal, unstructured, whatever data first into a relational schema, because with that schema you define really important logical statements as well. What's the connection between different tables? What is one row? How are these things all related to each other? And this kind of like logic can't be, a BI tool can't do that for you. You need to bring that in. You need to consider a data model, and that's why I would say, like, if you have unformal or informal data, I would, like, in the case, for example, if you have lots of different PDF documents, right, with like tables in there or with just like text data in there, I think the first job is to extract information from there and put that into a relational form. And that can be done with AI, for example, extracting information from PDF documents or automatically parsing form data and then putting that form data into a first maybe a JSON object and then into a table, having that kind of pipeline set up and then building a model on a data model on that and then integrating that in the BI system. So that's how I see it works normally.
Is it clear, or did you have something else in mind, the person who asked the question? If anything, you could just put that in the link again. Okay. So the next question is, what is the scope for deep learning techniques in BI?
Yeah, I think like it depends on the definition of deep learning. So for me, deep learning is especially when you do work with unstructured data, like text data, image data, audio data. This is where deep learning often comes into play. And if you have this definition of deep learning, I think the most important application area is turning unstructured data, as I said, into structured data. For example, extracting information from pictures. So, for example, there's one seems like one construction site going on here. There's one example where you can extract, for example, or count things on images, for example, where you can you can build something like a car detector where you have traffic cameras and you count the traffic on that cameras, right? That would be kind of a deep learning example. I don't really think that applying deep learning in a sense of predictive analytics would be really applicable. That would be more machine learning in my because you don't normally have that many features. That's how I would separate both.
So you're saying it would become an overkill for the
Yeah, it would become an overkill. Yeah. I mean, it's like still, if we're looking at machine learning, most machine learning models, they still have like a lot of variables or features that go into there. It could be a couple of hundreds, but when we talk about deep learning, I think it's still a different scale, right? So we are talking here about like hundreds or even thousands of different features that go into a model, and I think using that in the BI sense, that would be kind of like maybe an overkill. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, so before going to the next question, if you have any more queries, or if your question has not been answered yet, you could just put it in the question in the link. So yeah, moving on to the next question. How much business knowledge should be required to develop BI tools?
To develop BI tools, so I wouldn't suggest to develop them from scratch because of the BI tools existing. But let's say you want to build a BI tool for a company and you want to roll out Power BI, or come up with your you build something in Dash or any other framework that you have. Like in the beginning, I would always team up with the people from the business. It's very hard to get formally get that education, I would say, because there are so many things which are really, which need to be customized and which really depends on, what the business currently needs. So, of course, maybe having a background in business can't hurt. Like, for example, myself, I did my bachelor in business administration, and only then actually, studied IT management and data science and these things. So I would say I have a formal business education, but I think in most ways, the practical experience that you get just from working with people who are maybe non-technical or more on the business side, they give you the inputs that you need in order to build something. So yeah, I would always, team up with people from the organizations that are really keen on working on these things, and try to pair up with them together and see what you can build. I think it's really hard to go through a formal education unless you say you want to do an MBA or so anyway, and then just go ahead and do that. But otherwise, that might be not so efficient.
Yeah, okay. So the last question is, does Rapid AI plan to develop building blocks for BI?
It's a good question. So actually, our roadmap for next year is to focus more on the topic of AI-powered dashboards, because we have seen that companies are demanding still a lot of dashboards, and we want to cater this need and offer more, I would say, modular services that include those techniques into dashboards. For example, those Q&A capabilities, which can be integrated, as I mentioned, not only in Power BI but in other tools as well. So yeah, that's one thing on the roadmap for next year. And let's see, maybe we'll also release some of those services as an API, so that they can be just integrated in any tool that you use. But I'm not sure about that yet. But we definitely have that on our agenda for next year, that whole topic.
That's amazing. Okay, so I hope, okay, I think we're done with the question and answer session too. And yeah, is everyone done? Do we have any other questions? Okay, so yeah, okay, the session went amazing, better than what I imagined. And it was really interactive as well. Because of the interaction, it went really well. And also I was exposed to a lot of new concepts, and I also jotted down some stuff. And taking into account that majority of us are moving into a corporate setting very soon, I feel like a strong command in these powerful tools will help us immensely just to connect with the clients, So yeah, thank you so much. It was a very great session, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure being here. And then, good luck with everything. And see you soon. Thank you very much.
So before he leaves, a question: how do you age so well, sir?
Sorry?
How do you age so well?
8?
How do you age so well?
Age so well, yeah. I'm drinking a lot of water, you see. That's my trick.
Really nice having you here, sir, at our college.
Thank you very much. It was really an honor being here and a pleasure being here. So thanks a lot. Also for the interactivity, all for the questions. Thanks a lot for that. So really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yes. And also thank you for the book, free trial on the book.
Yeah, you're welcome. Maybe Krishi, I can share the link with you. Maybe you can share them via email as well. So that would be easier, I think, to use.
I will share it with the participants.
Yeah. So I really recommend doing that. It's such a large, wealth of knowledge